Saundra, it is so nice to be visiting with you. You've got a super unique topic we're going to discuss today. Had some customers come in to me and McGee Market, and they were asking about A2 milk and different things, and they said, "Do you have any donkey milk?" And I said, "Well, what? Donkey milk? What are you talking?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, we've ordered camel milk and donkey milk." I said, I've never heard of that. And so I got on, she's like, "Oh yeah, there's some in Oklahoma." So I got online, I started Googling donkey milk, Oklahoma, and I connected with you. So if you don't care, give us that introduction to who you are, and then we're going to take a deep dive into donkey milk.
Oh, absolutely. So we never intended to milk donkeys. I actually grew up on a wheat farm in Kansas, and I was one of those crunchy moms. I thought I did everything right, and I had two beautiful, healthy daughters. And when my oldest was 6 years old, she woke up one morning and she had severe separation anxiety and OCD, and I mean, like washing her hands until they were almost bleeding in one day. Hallucinations, rages, lost her artistic ability, just really had a lot of trouble with all of these things that came on all at once. Her reading abilities, all of these things were just kind of disappearing. And so we were one of the lucky few that discovered that she had PANDAS, pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorder associated with strep throat.
Mm.
So yeah, it's a cute bear, but it's not so cute in a disorder. And at the time, she's 17 now, so she was 6 then. A lot of doctors didn't know what it was. They didn't even believe it existed. There were terrible TV shows that came out saying that parents who said their children had this were crazy and all of this. And so we kind of had an uphill battle. I was very grateful. We actually had a doctor in Tulsa who did diagnose her correctly without even seeing her. He said, "Well, I could keep you as my best patient for the next 18 years, or I could tell you she's got strep throat. Go get her on some antibiotics. She'll be fine." Well, that we were very grateful for the diagnosis, but the oversimplification of get her on a round of antibiotics and she'll be fine was not the case. And so we did do the antibiotics because she did have raging strep throat with no fever, no symptoms at all, other than her brain inflammation. But when we went on those antibiotics, she actually had other symptoms come up. So a blinking tic and some other things that she would do and say and repeat repetitive speech patterns. And called up the doctor and was like, "Well, this is not cutting it." And he basically said, "Well, can I pray for you?" And absolutely. But you're also in the spot of, okay, I'm researching, I'm finding everything out. I actually told my pediatrician what it was and how to treat it. And so then I called the National Institute of Mental Health and I asked them, NIH, how do we treat this? What do you do? And they said, "Well, our best guess is antibiotics every day until she's 18 or 21, or IVIG treatments, which are, you know, $10,000 a pop, not covered by insurance." And I'm going, okay, if you're guessing, because they were going to treat it like rheumatic fever essentially. So if you're guessing, we can do a lot of praying and and do our own guessing. And so we every spare minute I had, we're researching and praying and crying and trying to take care of her in this new world of what she was dealing with. And long story short, I started looking into, at the time, there were no real great answers. And so we started a paleo diet, organic. We did some homeopathy. I threw everything but the kitchen sink at it. And one of the things I discovered was the autism community was having success, which is not supposed to happen, but I was seeing it. And so I started looking at what are the autism people doing for their children when they're recovering them. And I found a graph that had two circles that overlapped in the middle, and it was PANDAS disorder and autism, and this overlap of this neuroinflammation. So I started looking, what are these autistic parents doing? And one of the things they were doing was camel milk. So we tried camel milk and we did see some improvements on that. And I had done raw cow milk, raw goat milk, raw cow colostrum, And then I got raw camel milk, and she did improve some. And so all of these things, I never say there's like a magic bullet to recovering our children. I think that there were lots of steps to getting her to the point that there was a straw that broke the camel's back. In her case, it was a case of strep throat. But, all of these things I think were important. And we actually looked at getting camels and discovered they're can be quite dangerous. So I called up this naturopath that I said, "Can we milk an alpaca or like a littler thing in this same family as a camel?" And she said, "Well, try donkey milk. Some kids do better on that." So we got 3 American mammoth donkeys. The first time our daughter had a dose of donkey milk, she said, "I love you, Daddy," for the first time since onset, 3 months before, something she hadn't been able to do or overcome and since she had been sick. And that was within about 30 minutes of her first dose. So now we have one of the only donkey dairies in the United States. And that's kind of the story in a nutshell.
Wow, absolutely incredible. Well, let's get into it. So, how do you milk a donkey? Let's start with the basics. And then how much milk do they produce? I can't imagine it's a whole lot, like a Holstein would be. So, what is
Right.
it like to milk a donkey?
Yeah, well, my husband does the actual milking, and sometimes my daughters now milk as well. And it's very labor intensive, and it's different than cows in that, I mean, if the mother loses the baby, which tragically happens, and miscarriage, problem with the birth, and it's not like cows in that, from what I understand about cows, I've never delivered a baby cow. You have more time to get in there and shuffle things around and get that baby out. If something goes wrong in the birth of a baby donkey, which we have had happen, you have seconds to fix it. And if you don't get it done, get that baby pulled, the mother and the baby could die, or the baby, you could lose the baby. So we don't have the luxury of calling a vet, having him get here 30 minutes later, work that baby around, the whole James Harriet scene. It is hands hands on, everybody in, and that's if we see it happening and we get there in time. So we have had the incidents where we've lost a baby and the mom will dry up within about 48 hours. So they're very intelligent, and we share the milk with the mom and the baby the whole time. I actually had somebody reach out to me from Africa, and they were telling me, "Oh, I'm milking donkeys and I'm going to do this, but I need help because all of my babies die when they're 3 months old." And I was like, "Okay, what's going on?" And he's sending me pictures and whatnot and telling me what he feeds them. And I finally figured out he was not sharing the milk with the baby. He took it all for himself, and he was starving them. And I was like, "I'm done with you. I'm not helping with this." Like, I'm very careful about, we've had people here in the United States think, "Oh, I'll just milk a donkey, whatever." And for one, they don't even realize they need a jack, and that it takes two to tango. And so it's a learning curve. We have an amazing vet whose grandson actually drinks the milk, and he helped us with a lot of this. Veterinarians are not used to this because we would go in and we'd say we have this donkey that had this happen, injured, and they would prescribe something for it, and I'd look at the bottle and say, "Well, this is not to be used in anything for human consumption." But they're used to equine. And so we had this huge gap in knowledge, and us trying to help our veterinarians get to understand, no, we actually milk these equines, and this is why this is important, that they don't have the same medication that you would give to a horse. So now we have an amazing veterinarian who understands the complexities of it, and it's very much a labor of love. So
Well, can you go into the history of using horse or donkey milk as how this may not be as weird as it sounds on the surface? Because I was surprised, especially when you start looking into Mongolian culture. It's fascinating. Yeah, go into that a little bit on what you found out.
yeah, so Cleopatra supposedly had her own herd of 700 donkeys that she would bathe in the milk every day. And that one of the things we started doing was making our own skincare out of it because it was a big uphill battle. I mean, you understand we're here in the Midwest. Most people are very traditional in the way they think about medicine and how they treat their health. And so I couldn't give it away. I was like, look, this helped my kid. I'd hear about other people with pandas. I'd be like, come to the farm and we'll give you a jar of milk, please. And until they actually saw me on TV, then all of a sudden everyone believed me. I was like, so once I'm on TV, I'm believable. You know how it is. So, but historically, yeah, the Mongols would drink horse milk and they would put the milk in a leather pouch on the side of the horse. And as they were riding and conquering, the fermentation of the bacteria in that leather bag would create a fermented alcoholic horse milk beverage. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was considered one of their superfoods. And then in Mongolia, they would actually, people would go there, and there's a whole book about this for lung conditions. And I've had people in Eastern Europe, researchers, reach out to me and say, hey, do you have, FDA approval to say what we've been seeing here as far as the results they've seen with different lung conditions? And I'm always like, no, I do not have FDA approval. And as you know, there's not money for researching natural things and why they work. So we have a lot of anecdotal stories, and there is more and more research coming out now to back up what we have heard anecdotally. But the people and it's a very small donkey milk world, especially when we first started this. So we were connected to people around the world, and they would reach out to us and say, we've never heard of what you are experiencing with this autoimmune component. And that's sad because I feel like Americans are just highly, highly autoimmune and allergic to everything. But there they were mostly, using it in even hospitals for babies that were allergic to cow milk or soy milk, and seeing amazing results because it is the closest to any milk of breast milk. So that's one of the things they used it for. And now a lot, because of what we have gone through and are sharing our story, we have doctors recommending it. We have the Southern California Allergy Institute uses it in their program. And, there's more people interested in research on this. But yeah, Hippocrates recommended it. It's not a new thing. I think what's new is potentially the disorders and diseases that we have.
Yeah, sure. The whole thing's fascinating. So, for us, what got me really in the raw milk world was we had the Arkansas Health Department come in and get us in trouble because I have a grocery store, a farmer's market, and they said you can't sell raw milk. We had it, labeled for pet consumption only, all that, right? And so I was just like, we're 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 going to understand this. I'm going to understand milk from every angle that I possibly can, and make sure that we either are going about this the right way or not. And so what I found was that, man, raw milk has been demonized, and it's unjustly, and just basically straight up lies about so much of it. And then that it's not just cows, right? We have sheep, we have goats, a yak, water buffalo, a donkey, right? Like there's so much going on in this raw milk world. And I really hate that it's even called raw milk. This is real milk. And what we're talking about, talking about like we have a better outcome from soy milk for donkey milk. Well, of course we do, because that's not even milk, right? That's garbage.
Yeah.
So I want to hear a little bit about the adversities that you have faced through legislation or governmental, impacts.
Right. Yeah. And part of that is every time I have a podcast, I have to say, I'm not a doctor. This isn't medical advice, blah, blah, blah. This is our story, the whole drill. And we actually, I was very careful. And when we started this, I looked into all the laws. And I was like, okay, there are no laws, shockingly, about donkey milk in our state. It's all cow milk and goat milk. And so that was part of what we wanted to do, was share our story, how God worked in our life and how he helped our daughter, and get the word out about this disorder that is largely misdiagnosed. I mean, there's children still that are misdiagnosed for years, and the longer you miss this, the more I believe the brain creates pathways that are not the healthy pathways because it's trying to get around the inflammation. So it's much harder the longer you go without getting properly diagnosed and treated. And so we wanted to share our story, and we always said we're not going to break the law, and we're going to do everything right so that we can share our story. And so we were able to be in Southern Living magazine and in on news stories that went across the nation and really share about this disorder, because donkey milk is funny and cute. There's lots of different illnesses, but you add in donkey milk and it's a fun story to tell. And so we were able to share our story and what we do and, all of this. And we did that for years. There was a huge billboard about our donkey milk for one of these news stories in downtown Oklahoma City on one of the main, no problems, because we're not breaking the law. You have to pick up raw milk at our farm. And a few years later, we got involved in some environmental issues that we were fighting politically. And suddenly we had both the state and the federal government show up at our gate, and they told us we could not advertise our raw milk. And they started asking questions about our freeze-dried milk. So we also have started importing from the Azores Islands low temperature pasteurized freeze-dried donkey milk that we can ship anywhere in the United States. And that's part of the program in California. And so they're asking questions about both, but they're also telling us we can't advertise anymore. Well, you know as well as I do, if you can't advertise, you're done. No business can survive if you can't talk about what you're doing or tell anyone you have a product. And so we were very intimidated, very scared. They're telling us, no, we do have authority over you. And we don't have money to hire a lawyer, so we're going, okay. And then our next shipment of freeze-dried donkey milk worth about $17,000 was seized by the FDA. Held, that's the word they prefer to use, held for over 7 months. And in that time frame, we had been the only ones importing donkey milk to the United States. And we were very conscientious. It's cruelty-free, all of the things that we required. And we were comparing the results to our raw milk and seeing amazing results. We had tried a different freeze-dried milk from a different source, and we did not see those same results. So here we are, shut down on two fronts, and it was at the middle of the drought. You probably remember hay prices were through the roof, and we're like, how are we going to feed our animals, take care of our herd, take care of our family, and our businesses are shut down. Then through all that process, we discovered that they were actually filing legislation at the Capitol, at the state level, 2 different mirror bills that were changing the law from cow and goat milk to hooved mammal milk. And it was directly related to our farm and getting us under those regulations so that then we would be not able to advertise, not able to sell over a certain number of gallons of milk, all of this. And this came on years after all the publicity and press and everything, but we were fighting something that apparently is multi-million-dollar industry.
So where are y'all with all that now?
So we're still fighting the environmental issues that are happening around here, which you may or may not be familiar, but your audience should be aware of. It's something called biosolids or human error. The big cities dump it on farmland, and they tell farmers it's safe. And now they're shutting down these farmers, and they're telling them they have PFAS, forever chemicals, contamination. And that's a whole other story. The pharmaceuticals, all of that, they try to tell people it's the same thing as cow manure. It's not. So that we're still trying to get stopped in the state, and, not having a lot of progress, because it saves the cities a lot of money to use farmers as toxic waste dumps. But as far as the other legislation, that was really an amazing kind of miraculous story. It went all the way through. It passed every single floor, Senate, went to the governor, and the governor vetoed it. And it was sort of a tit for tat type thing. But then it went back to the Senate, and the Senate overrode that veto. And then it went to the House, and the House author, who was a legislator I had talked to, and I was very frustrated with, because he had pushed it through on his end. He had told them this won't affect anyone, blah, 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 blah. When it came back to the house, and I just found this out last week, he actually told me, he said, no, I found out more information, and I realized that it was not what they were telling me, and it would hurt us. And so he killed the bill, which was
Wow.
just amazing. Yeah. And it really sort of restored hope for me and our legislators that when he found out the truth, he did stand for us and killed a bill that, as a first year legislator, they had told him to run. So, and now we have legislation we're trying to get through that will allow donkey milk to be advertised. And it is partway through the process. And I've had actually legislators ask me, well, why don't you include cow milk and goat milk and that everyone can advertise their milk? And we tried that. I was up there and I tried to get them to add that language to that first bill, just let them advertise. This is, freedom of speech, constitutional right. It's a legal product, proven in Kansas, by the way, that if it's a legal product, you have the right to advertise. And they said that'll never happen in our state. They'll never be able to advertise cow milk, raw cow milk, which I'm waiting on a cow milk farmer to sue because this is unconstitutional. But I can't
I'm having a
fight.
hard time understanding why we are dictating what people, adults, right? Like Americans can or can't choose to eat for themselves. This is just mind blowing to me. Like, this is even a debate. Why is the government telling me what I can or can't eat or drink?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's a complete hypocrisy and all of it. I mean, one of the things we have tried to do is run legislation that if something is grown in sewage sludge with chemicals, chemical cocktail, pharmaceuticals, endocrine disruptors, that they would have to label it just like you'd put a cigarette warning on saying, hey, your beef was raised on human and industrial waste, even though you think it's grass fed. And, we cannot get that bill passed. They absolutely will not do that. But on the other hand, they won't let a farmer advertise their raw cow milk. And where it's fully transparent, you're going to the farm, picking it up, you see the cows there, you see the goats there, and you understand this farmer milked this and you're drinking it and it is not pasteurized. But you don't have that right to know what other things are grown in. So it's completely irrational, the way that we regulate things. And yeah, it's not like me drinking raw milk is going to put anyone else at risk. It's my choice.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Honestly, it's all about control. It's centralized control. But if
Definitely.
everybody has access to a raw dairy and small farms, then we have a resilient food system, and we don't need this centralized model that it's easier to control. I mean,
Right.
at the end of the day, it's really is what it is. And then when we're healthier, we don't participate in the sick care system that we've got. It's just honestly, it's a big racket for making money and control.
Yeah.
So, what's next for y'all? What if somebody wants to learn more? What do they do? If somebody wants to try donkey milk that's maybe freeze dried, like what is the next step for somebody that's like, wow, this is interesting. I would like to try it for myself.
Right. So we have two ways they can get it from us. They can go to donkeymilk4health.com and they can either get our freeze dried donkey milk or they can get our raw donkey milk. They do have to come to the farm to pick up raw donkey milk. And because, we do have them schedule. So on that form, they can schedule a time to come pick it up because it is limited. I didn't really go into that, but you don't drink it the way you drink cow milk. You don't drink large amounts. And we kind of learned that the hard way a little bit because I can drink it in a large amount and be fine. But a lot of Americans don't detox well. And so, especially these children with these disorders, it's very antibacterial. And this is proven. So, I have research to back all this up. And there is research on my website about these different things. But antibacterial, antimicrobial, antiparasitic, antifungal. And so, if you took, let's say, for example, a whole bottle of antibiotics, you would be very, very sick. And so, there's something called, and your listeners are very savvy, but Herxheimer reactions and die off. And so we now have to like kind of give a little warning of start really slow depending on your gut health and how well you detox, because you're not going to drink a whole big cup of donkey milk like you would cow milk. So we have people that are telling me they're taking incredibly small amounts and seeing results. And so that's great because it is more expensive than cow milk. And so with our daughters, we started probably with, a shot glass, an ounce, 2, 3 times a day. But now, we can actually have it on our cereal and not have any, flushing or anything like that. But, if you're standard American diet and you're just starting this journey, I would probably say start at a very low dose and work your way up. So, the freeze dried, they can reconstitute it and drink it like milk, or some people even put it in capsules for their children, especially if their kids are like a lot of these kids with neuroinflammation have sensory disorder. And so some of them have food aversions. They cannot eat things, but a lot of them can take pills. So I've had parents even put the freeze dried in capsules and take it that way. And then they can send it to school or whatever with their kid. So it's a little more flexible if you do the freeze dried, and we can ship it. But the raw, they do have to pick up here, and we freeze that in glass jars. And we've had someone come all the way from Canada, and he actually, and it was for his lungs. He didn't speak much English, but we communicated. And he stayed at a hotel and would come to the farm every day. He knew what time we were milking, and he wanted it fresh, like fresh from the donkey, which we were like, no, we have to do our thing. But we would give him the milk, and he would stand right there and drink it. And he stayed for a week or two. And then when he was leaving, he's like, good. And we're like, okay. Went back to Canada. So it was a good testimonial.
Fantastic. Well, this is just incredible. It's a lot to think about. Definitely can be a stretch for people, but I think these are important conversations,
Yeah,
and the more diverse and resilient our food system is, the better off. Because I mean, at the end of the day, people should really be eating local and seasonal and natural foods. I mean,
yeah,
that's the whole gist of behind nutrition, in my opinion. So uh,
absolutely.
thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me and laying all this out. I have so much respect for parents that have an issue with their kids that just light the world on fire for solutions. I think, especially the autism and cancer worlds. I think that and heavily moms, right? I mean, y'all have made just a massive impact. So thank you for what you're doing and not willing to back down and keep trucking on.
Oh, thank you. I'm so impressed with you and what you've done for your family and what you're sharing with the world. It's just amazing. So thank you very much. I'd love to come see you next time we're in Arkansas.
I love it. Come on, come on. We'll make it out to Oklahoma too.
Sounds good.